Welcome back to Social Justice Insights Kenya podcast. My name is Maria, and I am the founder of this multi channel advocacy platform where I challenge harmful gender norms and narratives. I know it's been a while, but I am truly glad to be back and with great news that just a few days ago I won the inaugural Patsy Robertson Award category of the 2026 Commonwealth Youth Awards. And this is for recognizing my outstanding communication skills using media to shape peaceful, inclusive, democratic societies. So I wanted to thank all of you for your support and above all for engaging with me. Through your constant messages, comments, and feedback, I know that my approach is working and that I'm building my own social justice warriors who question and call out long-standing harmful gender norms and narratives in their homes, workplaces, and even communities. Now, on to my beautiful guest for the day. Today, I'm sitting with a woman whose life and work carry the weight of many silent stories. Njeri Wa Migwi is not only the co-founder and executive director of Usikimye, but also a woman who turned pain into purpose and survival into a lifelong fight for justice. This episode explores the realities of tackling gender-based violence and femicide in Kenya through grassroots advocacy, survivor-centered response, and systems change. It focuses on the lived realities behind the work, including the gender norms, societal attitudes, and institutional failures that continue to shape survivors' experiences. Gender-based violence and femicide are often discussed in terms of statistics, outrage, and public statements, but far less often through the daily emotional and operational realities of people working closest to survivors like Njeri does. Njeri's work through Usikimye offers a powerful entry point into the human, organizational, and political dimensions of this GBV and femicide crisis, especially because she's both a survivor and a frontline activist. This conversation unpacks what really needs to change in order to prevent violence, support survivors, and hold systems accountable. It also creates a space to discuss harmful gender norms and narratives that show up in survivor cases and how communities, institutions, and men and boys can become a part of the solution to end GBV and femicide in Kenya. So beyond Njeri's activism, this episode will also allow listeners to know Njeri more deeply as a person, her journey, her resilience, and what drives her. What has been the hardest and what keeps her going in such emotionally demanding work? Welcome, Njeri. I would love to know, who is Njeri Wa Migwi beyond public activism, and what would you want people to understand about you as a person?
Njeri Wa Migwi is somebody who likes, I think that's a hard question sometimes, because sometimes when somebody asks you who are you beyond your activism and you realize, oh my God, I do a lot of activism and I forget who I am sometimes, but I am somebody who loves some very nerdy things. I am an at heart. Something that when I start telling people, they're like, really? And I'm like, yes. I like Star Trek. I like fantasy. I feel like life is already hard enough. I don't even watch, the way when everybody was saying, let me watch Janasi, I did not watch that thing because I feel like I already occupy a point in life that I see so many of these things. I want no part of them. They're not entertaining for me. So yes, I will go watch Star Wars, Star Trek. I'm an anime head. I love anime. I watch anime. I promise you, I am a big One Piece fan. All 1,156 episodes. I love Kenyan music. I am Hive down, which means I love Beyonce. Right? So all of those things add up to the person that I am. I love music. Ways in which I relax is taking a very long, very fast drive. I feel like that's part of me. Yeah, I like dancing. I go for concerts. So there are things that I do outside of all of these things that feel in those parts of me that the public hardly ever gets to see. And when I meet them in places, they're like, oh, you're here. And I'm like, yes. Yeah. So yeah, I feel like there are parts of me that still lean into those frameworks that are outside of the things that people would think that I would enjoy.
I understand, because a lot of your front-facing work is activism, so people think that that is your life. While it is a large part of your life, it's very important to realize that there are human aspects to this work, and you're a human too. You deserve human experiences that are peaceful and bring joy to you. What experiences in your life shaped your awareness of violence and injustice when it comes to gender-based violence in Kenya?
And before I even wear my cap as an activist or as a human rights defender or as anything else, first and foremost, I am a survivor of gender-based violence. And that really shapes how I see gender-based violence. I tell people my life is so nuanced. Now, as an activist and somebody who is in the women rights space, I understand how all of that could shape the person I am today, because I tell people, number one, I was a teen mom. Number two, I got married so early. I ran away because I was so ashamed of being pregnant that I ran away and went and got married. And my dad had no problem. My dad was like, you're pregnant, you're going to raise a child. But I used to look at my dad and I'd feel so guilty because I feel like he raised me better. And so for me, the one in which I could use to escape was to get married. And so I took off and when I got married, teen marriages don't. And I stayed in that marriage because I wanted to prove a point to myself and to other people. One, I came from a divorced background, so I did not want divorce to be the thing that taints me. Tell me why that was so much in my head that I stayed for 15 years in a bad marriage. And when I mean a bad marriage, it was a very violent marriage. I lost part of my hearing from my left ear. And so, and I didn't know how to ask for help. That was the thing. I didn't know who to ask for help, how to ask for help, and even where to get help. And again, I was also married in wealth, so that also complexed how I could ask for help. I remember even one time the time for the year, and I was there sitting and being treated, and my husband was in the reception and I was in the room, and he would ask if I was willing. The doctor was like, "I can help you if you could actually tell me the truth. What happened to your ear?" And I was busy telling him I hit the door. He was telling me everything about this injury. Does not talk about it in the door. Matthew, I couldn't speak because I couldn't hear for whatever reason, because I was so injured, I couldn't hear. So we could only write notes. And he was like, I can help, but I was too afraid to seek help. So for me, that really informs why I keep on doing this work, because I do understand it took me about 9 times to leave. And so I understand, that question, why don't women leave? I understand it. I've lived it. I've been her. And also for me, I took time when I realized that I had a lot of, I don't do this to save anybody. I completely understand. And that's why for me, and part of the way we speak about it is we are not here to save you. You have to do the work for yourself. We are here to give you and to provide for you the way and the work. The work has to come from you. And if you tell me today, I'm going back to my husband, I'm like, I understand that you need to go back to your husband. It's okay. When you actually are ready to leave, here are the options that you can use to leave. So our work and the work that we do is Survivor Center, because I went through that. That informed how I would have wanted to be saved, if you can say so, or how I would have wanted somebody to reach out and help. It's really, really does play a very important role in understanding all the issues, violence, and how they can affect you as a woman.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm so sorry to hear your story. Honestly, it's not easy at all because a lot of people read stories about gender-based violence survivors and they keep asking, why don't you just leave? Like it's as simple as walking through the door without realizing there's different dynamics, there's different family aspects, there's even the things that are from your childhood that contribute to why you're deciding to stay or why you decide to leave. What was the moment you realized you could no longer stay silent and you had to do something bigger than yourself?
I feel sister.
Mm.
I feel femicide hit me so hard that for me, it changed me as a person. It changed how I see people. It changed the dynamics of femicide in Kenya for me, because I couldn't imagine that for 7 to 8 hours, you can drive with an axe, knowing very well I'm going to kill somebody, and not have the thoughts of like, I don't need to do this. I can go back. And then publicly butchering her in public. That isn't even what now radicalized me. What radicalized me was what happened after. Because what happened after in April of 2019 was jokes, insane jokes. The language, the kind of pushback that we saw was absolutely crazy. I mean, men changed their profile pictures to access. And as a woman, you couldn't say anything on social media for a time. And worse still, by the end of that week, there was a song and it was called Katashoka. And I couldn't believe it. I was looking at this. I wanted commiseration. I wanted people to be, that isn't what and how I expected people to be. What I expected from people was empathy. But now instead they were like, oh, she deserved it. She probably ate after this bear. I was sitting there. And that is where there's a popular song in Kenya called Kukula Fair. And that came to that. Because people were like, he gave her money. And if he gave her money, then she deserved to be killed. And that for me was absolutely insane. And I couldn't believe it. And in my head, I thought, perhaps we could, start talking about gender-based violence. And perhaps with speaking about gender-based violence, then we could be able to maybe create a space where people understand what is gender-based violence, what is femicide, what is all of these things. So yeah, that was my point. That is where we began.
Yes, I would say Ivy Wangeshi's murder was very tragic for me as well. For those who are listening from outside Kenya, Ivy Wangeshi was a femicide victim. I believe she was killed in 2019. And her attacker hit her with an axe. Now, she was one of the most publicized femicide cases in Kenya and led also to the beginning of one of the reasons why I started talking about femicide on my platform as well, because for some reason that sparked more femicides or sparked an increased attention on femicide. So both positive intentions and negative intentions, as you said. And somehow I believe that this also inspired more femicides to occur. Proof of that? Well, I wish I could conduct research on that, but that is truly what I believe. I would love to know what inspired you to found Usikimye. Why was it important to create a survivor-centered response to addressing the gap of GBV and femicide response?
It wasn't really an organization per se. It was just supposed to be an information hub on gender-based violence. It was never meant to grow it to an organization. That wasn't the idea. The idea of it becoming an organization came way later. What it was for us was a space. I met my co-founder and I was already doing some work and I'd called it Survivors Anonymous at that point. But the work we were doing was just providing therapy for people who had been affected by sexual violence. And so we had thought of forming, and we had done in 2017, 2018, 2019. And so when I met my co-founder in 2019, after the femicide march, and she was like, maybe we could do something. And we thought, hey, let's open a page. And I remember we were discussing this over drinks and we're like, yeah, Usikimye sounds like a good name because people are silent about all these issues of gender-based violence. Perhaps we can make it less of a taboo. And that is how it started. It was never meant to be an organization. The organization came after COVID, not during COVID, because now we were all home. We were all working, but we were all home. However, now people were like, I need help. You keep telling us we can seek help here and here, but we're not getting the help that we need. So what do we do? And I was like, you know what? Maybe I can just go outside and help with 1 or 2 cases. And I did. And then I found out that what I thought theoretically is not what happens on the ground. As Kenyans likes to say, on the ground, vitu ni different. That is to say, on the ground, things are different. When you go outside there, that is when you realize, oh my God, the policing, non-existent. The hospital, government hospitals do not provide the things that they are supposed to do. And then that is when you recognize, oh my God, there is a big structural gap here that as an organization, we need to be able to answer into it. And that is how Usikimye started, because the idea was, what is this gap that needs to be filled? And of course, as we grew, we started realizing that you cannot just become like who is outside there. So we started understanding what are the survivor-centeredness principles and started instituting them, because really to be survivor-centered is to understand how this works from the angle of the survivor, really, and to actually center the survivor in how you respond to their issues. There is no one single person that is responded to the same way, because yes, they may be similar, but they are facing different circumstances. And so it's realizing that we need to center the survivor because it's about them, not about us.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I think that we lack a lot of survivor-centered responses when it comes to GBV in Kenya, especially when it comes to femicide, because femicide stems from GBV. So we fail to have a survivor-centered addressing of GBV, and then when we fail to do that, there is more femicide. But what we have realized that me and Njeri were talking behind the scenes, and we realized that this year there's been a lot of femicides, and we were brainstorming and wondering, why is this happening? Is it an economic issue? Is it a structural issue? And we realized that it comprises all these issues. And you'll realize that there is a lot of femicides reported, especially this year, because of a culmination of all these problems. Amnesty International wrote that there's at least 8 femicide cases every week in the Kenyan media written. Now, in real life, I believe that this is more because on social media, there are more. I wanted to ask you, like, do you think there are more cases?
I was looking at a case that I saw on social media, and I couldn't see it anywhere. It was completely, as part of doing the work that we do on Maskan, which is our exhibition, where we honor and we remember, and we also use it as an advocacy to victims of femicide. And I was looking for that particular femicide, and I couldn't find it anywhere. I couldn't even trace where it happened. It was a child, 3 years old. She had been reported missing, but I could see that she had been photographed near Nyahururu Falls. So I assumed that maybe she had been from around that area. But the person who posted both the missing poster as well as her body, right? So you could see this is a 3-year-old who had been defiled and killed. And I don't even have her name. And it really, really bothers me that I don't know who she was, right? And so for me, she's an unnamed baby. And it's sometimes I'm so angry. And so you find that there's so many things that are not picked up by the media, because with the media, we also need to also talk about how the media frames issues of femicide as well. And if it is not sensational enough, it doesn't really carry the weight that it needs to. And I was also talking to my colleague in African Harbor, the ones that also keep a lot of data on femicide. And she told me the reason they don't release as much as they should is because if they release all that information every maybe quarter, then people will become desensitized to femicide. The same way people have become sensitized to.
Yes, I believe so, because we have had a 10% rise in femicide between 2022 and 2024. There have still been reports in the media, albeit not very often. There have been reports almost every day, and I have seen the public opinion shift from empathy to apathy. People not really caring, or rather, the narrative of it being, well, it happens, there's nothing we can do about it, or men get killed too, which is not what we're talking about, because femicide is gender motivated killing of women that mostly stems from gender based violence and is done by boyfriends, according to data by Odipudev. So a lot of misunderstanding and the constant desensitization of people through the reports. It's a very hard balance to strike, I believe. Going back to your work, we talked about some of the femicide cases stemming from GBV, but I would like to know what kinds of patterns do you encounter most often in these cases?
Do you know the most distinct pattern is actually intimate partner violence? And for me, how I describe femicide is actually the apex, the culmination of gender-based violence. It's just that. Unchecked, let me put it, the unchecked and runaway gender-based violence, because if we had worked on gender-based violence, we wouldn't have femicide. And so for me, one of the most things I see, and I call it intimate partner femicide, because it springs from violence. When you listen to the families, when you listen to the people left behind, they'll be telling you, we tried to tell her to leave because her husband was violent, or from friends, or even the children, that alikuwa anamchapa. So you find that one of the most common pattern is the pattern of, intimate partner violence. That's number one. Number two, the other thing that we see a lot are issues of access. A lot of access. The minute people try to leave, you will find out that this person has refused you to leave, or you have left and they come after you. That has been a lot. A lot of femicides that we have seen, quite a number, have also come from exes or even partners who have left each other. This sensational, as Kenyan try to put them, because that is the ones that they do a lot, are based on Airbnbs. They're hardly 1%. They're hardly 1%. And once again, here to clarify and to quantify that for me, you going in an Airbnb or a hotel is an accommodation. It is not an execution chamber. So I hate the way we frame it. Like, because I went to an Airbnb, I deserve to be killed. I feel like that framing comes out from our social religious norms that actually serve to, victim blame and serve to, of course, say that she's not perfect and therefore she needed to be killed. The other very important pattern is sex workers. Way before we started seeing actual femicide mainstream, as starting to see men killing their wives, their girlfriends, and so on, we saw a lot of sex worker-related femicide. And this is never captured in data, but a lot of sex workers. I want to believe generally out of the femicide data we have, that is even the one that is recognized. Over 15% is sex worker based. And so that is a pattern that I feel a lot is really largely ignored. I work with a lot of sex worker organizations, and they tend to tell me when a sex worker has been killed. And every week, from the few sex workers I know, I hear over 3 cases a week. And none of these cases I ever published because they're sex workers. Who cares? She was killed in her work. And so a lot of sex workers, and that That for me also works around the education of stranger femicides. Yeah, because these are their clients. They may have not known them. And so that is also something. Also, the other one that is emerging and really not emerging, I think now is, we can't even call it nascent. It is now actually a pattern, in fact, is defilement and femicide. And in children who they have defiled. So those are some of the patterns that we tend to see in our work.
Wow, I think you've identified very important aspects that people tend to misunderstand or undermine, which is the femicide against sex workers, because there is the norm that sex work is shameful. There is the norm that this is taboo. So it's not brought in the newspapers because it doesn't want to destroy the moral fabric of society by making it seem like actual work and calling them sex workers. And the second thing that you've talked about is the defilement and then the killing of children. Now, a lot of people like to believe that Kenya is safe for children. But I would like to argue the opposite because recently in the newspaper articles, there's been a lot of defiled and killed children, and these children happen to be girls. There's also some that are boys, but majority are the girls. Now, a lot of people don't tend to count these as femicides because girls are not really women. But when you look at the context and the manner in which these murders have occurred is something that is very troubling and also indicates a form of PDF file kind of aspect in Kenya, which we should also be worried about. And so these are very important things that you've brought up because when it comes to femicide statistics in Kenya, as you said, sex worker femicides are not counted. And children femicides are not counted as well. When I look at the data, I hardly see data on this. So thank you for bringing this to light. What are some of the most common myths or assumptions that people make about gender-based violence survivors?
One, which is the thing that everybody knows, is GBV is a private matter. It's a family issue. It should not be brought into public. When I say the government is complicit, and most people are always like, what are you talking about? The government has nothing to do with it. These are two people. In fact, in Kenya, we have that mad saying where people say two people who cover themselves with one debate, nobody should interfere. And for me, I feel like that is so, I don't want to use that language, but it is such a stupid take because what do you mean? When we want to get married, don't we go before the government and we say that this union is formed by the government? When we want to divorce, isn't it a government issue? So when I am violated, isn't a government issue? And when the government absolutely does nothing about it, then this becomes a government issue. So for me, that is very much a public safety issue. Right? It is not just a private matter issue. So that for me is a myth. The other myth that I see is why did she not leave? You know, that is such a big misconception and it's such a dangerous assumption as well, because it means that A, you could be lying, two, you could be complicit in your own struggle. And the other thing is that people don't understand also that you could be navigating several things, which include economic, social, and even safety constraints. So for me, that is very, very frustrating because people don't get to see that. They also don't get to see the psychological aspects of why women stay in dangerous relationships, toxic marriages, and so on. So those are some of the things that we see even when we post, and you can even see in the comments. Those are some of the questions I asked. Why did she leave? I really, really dislike that question by itself. Delayed reporting. Also, when you report and nobody listens to you, the assumption is no one cares. So also that also plays into why did she leave? Why did she leave? Because even the things, where is she going? We don't even have a government safe house in Kenya. So where is this woman supposed to go, right? So all of these things are really some of the really common myths or dangerous assumptions, if I should put it out there, that we tend to see.
These are very, very common. I think everyone has heard this in their lifetime living in Kenya, is that it's between the two of them. And why didn't she leave? I heard those two very much when I was growing up, and gender-based violence seemed like a very normal thing, like something that I should expect, just being a woman, and especially if I got into a future relationship and I was a victim, that would be something that I should expect is gender-based violence. But what a lot of people do not know is that gender-based violence and femicide is actually leading to economic loss. Kenya loses 46 billion shillings every year in GDP just because of gender-based violence in Kenya. This is through productivity, legal costs, medical expenses. All this is like 1.1% of our GDP. This is actually reported. And if you read the technical report on the working group on GBV and Femicide, they say the same thing, that there is the expectation that women should stay in the relationships when there is violence. And this comes from people who are called gatekeepers in society. This is the women's parents, the pastors in the community, they all go to these people. The victim and the perpetrator go to these people for advice most of the times, and they're told stay in the relationship, even stay for the sake of the children. But most of these have actually translated into real femicide cases that have been documented. So it's important that you see what happens in real life and how that actually leads to loss. You talked about structures at safe houses and lack of government support. So outside of the misunderstanding of the movement, what are the emotional and practical realities of rescue, shelter, and survivor support at Usikimye?
Let me say this. One of the things that you have to understand is that gender-based violence is a very expensive cost to incur, even as an organization. Because when it comes to operational specifics, people only see when you post and you say, hey, we've rescued these women. What they don't see are the operational specific costs behind it. When you rescue somebody, we are looking at taking them to the police station, taking them to hospital, taking this very person to safety, and safety compromises of safe houses. The safe houses in Kenya are all privately owned. We have safe houses, but we only have 23 beds. And when you're rescuing somebody, you're rescuing them and their children. So you could only maybe have 3 people in your safe house and their children. So when you have these people in your safe house, people are not thinking about the food, the rent, the staff costs to run that safe house, the diapers, the water, the electricity, to keep this running, the psychosocial support that you need to give them, and sometimes even the livelihood cost that comes with running a safe house as well. So all of these things are the nitty-gritties it takes towards running just one person as a rescue, from the point of contact to the point of when they leave. We are talking about minimum spend, because they stay with us for about a month or so minimum. But there are people who have been with us. Like, for example, there's a girl we rescued. Her name is Njeri. She's been with us now. This is 2.5 years. We don't know where to take her because there are no safety nets for people with invisible illnesses because of her, a mental illness. So we are now even looking at the additional cost of her medication, her care, because she has a caretaker who has to take care of her. And we don't know where to take her because, again, as I said, no safety nets. So lack of safety nets that makes also people not leave, because where are you going? Remember that when this person is staying there with her children, the children's education has been stopped. So sometimes you also have to talk to the primary school in the adjacent areas so that the kids can join. These are public schools because we cannot afford a private tutor. So all of these are expenses that you actually have. You see them happening every time somebody is looking for safety. And so that is major. And that is money that we do not get funding from. We don't have that kind of funding. It is hard work. Response work is hard work. And I understand why a lot of people would rather not do response work, because as you do it, you are understanding how heavily that sits on your shoulders as a person who works on it, and even our staff that also do the work. The tendency to absorb that kind of trauma as well is really something that really affects you heavily. So those are some of both hidden and also obvious costs that people do not factor in. Like yesterday, I was in court for a case of a child I rescued in 2025 February. Not only did we rescue the child in February last year and took her to hospital and did everything that needed to be done and removed her from the danger that she was in, we've even managed to find her grandmother and remove her from the children's home that she was living in, and now taken her to safety with her grandmother. And all of this has been done without the matter being listened to in court. So by the time you've even taken the perpetrator to court, you have done all the other background work. So sometimes it's really becomes something else. Those are all those, as I said, those invisible threads that people don't get to see, the unglamorous work, the actual putting in your hands and making them dirty in working around issues of survivors. Yeah. And also the tendency for burnout, the burnout that you feel at the end of the day when you're doing this work. It's heavy work. It is unappreciated work, even sometimes in terms of the survivor. Not that you expect appreciation. You completely understand where it's coming from. And you completely understand that this is somebody who, this is what they know best, and they can turn on you in a minute. And sometimes it does hit you and you're like, you know what, I don't need to do this. But yeah, we keep on doing it because it is work that needs to be done. And so it has really helped people to understand that I can report and there is actually resolution towards this kind of work as well.
Yes, your work is so commendable. I was telling Jerry that I wrote about her in my master's thesis because I find her work so compelling, not only through digital activism, but actually putting her boots on the ground, going to work, dealing with survivors' cases. I find it such amazing work because, as you said, It is thankless work. A lot of people don't realize that sometimes you don't even get a thank you. Sometimes it takes such a hard toll on you. And at the end of the day, you're also just a person. You're just a person, and it's hard to see such cases because you also have a feeling that this could happen to you. That, it's very hard. It's very hard to see these things because somehow I believe it also chips away at your belief in humanity. If someone can do that to another person, do you have faith in humanity? So I truly commend your work. So I would love to know also for the audience's benefit, what does a typical day at work look like for you, and what services can people get from you once they report a case or if they want to report a case?
So for us, there is no typical day that looks the same as the other. Yes, we have programmatic work that, is definitely on a day-to-day basis, but I feel like the crisis is worse than what people realize. Number one, we have a crisis hotline that people call in, and that is where we majorly receive a lot of our work. And the crisis hotline, number one, is to receive issues, any gender-based violence that is being reported. Number two, it is also a therapeutic line where people also get therapy from, or especially teletherapy. The other thing is people walk into the office, and the other cases that we receive them also on social media platforms. So that is one of the ways. So now, all of these cases, none is the same. And on a general day, we will receive between 5 to 10 calls. On a good day, I say that's a good day. So that is a usual day. So we receive 5 to 10 calls. So on those calls, now you have to follow up. Is it the police? Is it a referral case? Is it a case which is within our scope of service? Or is it a case that now we have to look for another organization? Mark you, organizations work differently. So that may not be a priority for them. What looks like a priority, and then now people come back and they're like, "Oh, those people didn't serve me," so it becomes an actual issue. So different things that happen. So remember, everything is running concurrently. We have staff in the safe houses that are taking care of the issues at the safe house. We also have the helpline. As I said, we have the medical caseworker going outside and checking survivors who need to be helped. We also are going to court. I remember this very Monday, we got a new legal intern. We do take a bit of interns here and there. So we have a legal intern, a psychologist intern, and gender development interns as well. And so she just started her first day. The week before, she was being told how things run. Now, Monday was her reporting day. And she reported, and we told her, "Listen, we have just had a femicide case yesterday night. And so now what you're going to do is to take this lady to the police station first day of work." I felt so sorry for her because it's like, oh my God, poor girl. Like, this is your first day, and the first thing you're having to deal with is a femicide case. And I was just thinking, oh, there is nothing in this office that makes sense. For somebody looking outside and coming in, they'll be like, "Oh, what is happening?" I'm not. And we've had people who've quit day 2 and they're like, "You know what? This isn't what I expected." And I'm like, yeah, we don't sing Kumbaya here. Things escalate from 0 to 100. And then we have very easy days when nothing much is happening. There is a lull in the system, and we're very grateful for that, because then we can catch up on paperwork. Because one of the things most people don't understand is because of sustained casework, we have a lot of paperwork. You're looking at PRC forms, P3 form, copies of forms that need to go to court. This document needs to go here. Looking for witnesses, preparing witnesses who are going to show up in court, taking people to police stations, all the same. While at the same time, we're running a feeding program, because one of the things is that Usikimye is located in an informal settlement, an urban informal settlement, which means we see a lot of poverty. And other than poverty alleviation, we are also looking at ways in which to stop gender-based violence. And one of them is to do a feeding program, because that means a lot of children who could have been lured with food are not lured. So that is also a stoppage. We also have a lot of women empowerment programs that we run. We have mentorship for women. Like today, we were doing our teen moms program. So we're talking to teen moms in the community, because we are trying to compel them to go back to school. My friend, it is such a hard job. Where we are has been also declared a hotspot of child marriages. I should be called girl marriage, but that's another story for a different day. When we say child marriage, there are no women out here running after boys and marrying them. We all know who's marrying the girls. So a lot. I was looking at a 14-year-old with 2 children. They're not twins. So we have a teen moms program. We have an SRH program for girls. So that also runs concurrently. And school-based advocacy programs around issues of mental health, as well as life skills, as well as, of course, menstrual hygiene and management, adolescence, and all of those things that fall around that. So We also do a lot of community sensitization because we're in the community. We want people to be able to report. We do public barazas with the community, Nyumba Kumi, the chiefs, all of that. So as I said, no one single day is the same. Yesterday we had the launch of a Maskan documentary. The whole of August we will be doing the Maskan exhibition. So we'll have to have 2 staff members present at Maskan at every time. So it's a whole ecosystem where we do different things. I have to run around looking for money to also make the organization run because, the cogs and the wheels that have to keep on running. So basically, it depends.
Wow, that you're doing so much. And I feel that what I see is like 0.1%. I had no idea that all goes on. Yes, because I see your different programs, and in my mind, I thought there was like 3 or 4. But now I see there's a lot more than that. A lot of work goes into it, a lot of effort and staff. I was aware of the feeding program, I was aware of the documentary, but not of everything else, especially the child marriage, the SRH advocacy, the barazas, because these are things that actually go into community engagement to try and hinder these crimes from even happening in the first place. So I truly must commend you. This is just wow. And the fact that you just smile and you seem so at peace to me is like, it's like, wow, like honestly, God bless you because this is just, you're amazing. So you did talk about doing the barazas and doing a lot of education. Usikimye did start as an education hub. Now, from my research and from the content that everyone sees that I put out, harmful gender norms and narratives lead to the occurrence of GBV and femicide. So I know that you're aware of this and you interact with a lot of cases of different types of GBV. So what types of harmful narratives or norms about gender do you see over and over again in your cases?
Number one is victim blaming, blame shifting. Community attitudes really, really play a lot in keeping survivors trapped. Because number one, and I say this, because a lot of women will say about marriage because they don't want to be single moms. Because in Kenya, being a single mother is really frowned upon. Is really looked down as though you are the worst thing. Not the parent that abandoned you, but the parent that stayed is actually blamed heavily. And so a lot of women would rather not be a single parent. And so that is already a communal attitude, right? That is keeping them trapped because the community is not going to be there. The society is not going to be there when you really need to leave. So, or when you're being beaten, but you find that is something that makes them stay. And also nobody ever talks about the perpetrator's conduct, which really annoys me because I feel like this is a social reproduction of gender blame. Like it's not a neutral cultural part. This is something that keeps on being compounded on survivors to keep on staying. And it's really one of the most frustrating things because I promise you, we have seen really bad cases. And you're like, this is it. This woman cannot go back. And she goes back. Also, you also need to understand that the other thing is economical dependency used as a method to keep you staying in that marriage and also being used by your parents. Like that money is not so bad. At least he pays school fees, right? So again, societal blame and also parental blame and also religious conditioning because Kenya is a very religious country. You cannot remove religiousness from this. I mean, the kuvumilia ndoa is a thing that is, you have to persevere marriage is also a stereotypical attitude in this country. Like, it's not so bad. It could have been worse. Like, at least your husband provides. I mean, he may beat you a little, but at least he provides, right? I mean, what is one slap when your children are in a good school? And so you find that is also something that I have a very big problem with because it is individual moralizing, that keeps us stagnant around that. And of course, even in my language, when we say motumia is the one that keeps silent. So there is always a reward of silence, right? Even when you look at things like police discretion, where they tell you, go back to your husband. I mean, yesterday we even had a Waskis here. When you look like things where the chiefs are the ones doing the mediations, right, between parties, because the chiefs are the people on the ground. So you find a lot of them are the ones who are doing the mediation. And when you look at things like church council, that prioritizes marriage preservation over safety. So all of these are really things that we really need to work on changing that kind of belief. And I think that those are some of the things that I really, really see. And the role they play in ensuring that survivors keep staying in the same space.
The very important things that you've talked about because they're also very context specific to Kenya, which a lot of Kenyans don't understand. There are a lot of research papers on the context specific norms and attitudes that Kenyan women face when it comes to GBV, but they don't go very in depth as Njeri has done because these are things like church leaders, their family, and economic abuse, financial abuse, which is what goes on a daily basis. You're told, yeah, he pays for everything, so you might as well just persevere, or the marriage counseling that comes from a Christian priest who tells you just stay for the sake of marriage. Marriage is a godly union. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is that most GBV survivors hardly ever make it to survivorship. They often translate into femicide cases, which was also reported in the technical working group report. And they said that they know that these people or gatekeepers play a role in contributing to femicide, but it's very hard to de-educate most of society from believing in what they counsel for. So hearing this from you has been very affirming. We also have to remember there's another statistic that 30% of women and 19% of men believe that husbands are justified in beating their wife. There's more women who believe in that than men. So what kind of effect does this socialization or these norms have on us women ourselves? Because we grow up believing that it should be our fault, or rather like because of the victim blaming, when this is not the case. So why is femicide a critical issue to name separately? Because during the hashtag End Femicide KE, you were at the front lines, and we want femicide to be declared a national crisis, but also to be declared a separate crime. Why do you think this is so important?
Naming it separates it from GBV and also from homicide. Because if you think about it, femicide, as I said earlier, is the fatal end of the pattern, right? It's the apex of gender-based violence. And again, femicide is gendered killing. We have to be very cognizant of the fact that it is gendered killing. It is not just random, it is gendered. And therefore, in order for us to be able to know what to do with it, and to track it and to fund it and to also be able to end it, we need to name it specifically as what it is. If you look at it, femicide isn't tracked as its own crime category. Is one of our biggest systemic failures. If you imagine if the state itself would publicly release consolidated femicide, let me tell you, the last time the state released any consolidated data was in March of 2025, when they said 125 women had been killed over that period. How do you govern a crisis that you're not measuring? How do we even systemically even do advocacy around it? How do we systemically do anything around femicide if it is not separated from any other homicide cases, right? Because this is very easy to track. We can tell on this particular thing, this is where we are looking at. This is the patterns that are emerging. The same way we were talking about earlier. We're even looking at different patterns that keep on emerging. The other time it was acid. The other week it was beheading. This week it is throwing people off balconies. So we should be able to look at these patterns specifically and then name them, fund them. And then, of course, then we will be able to work up this pattern because it is visible and countable. So the visibility, the accountability.
Absolutely. And what a lot of people don't realize, it is the circumstances of these femicides that makes them femicide. As Njeri said, it's gendered killing. Sometimes it comes from an argument. Sometimes it comes from the control, the need for control, or the entitlement to a woman's body or a child's body. These are things that a lot of normal crimes like murder and homicide do not actively consider when they're trying the case. And we need to recognize femicide as a crime in order to address it. And I believe that the lack of recognition truly is a large systemic failure. The same thing was said by Audrey of Femicide Count KE, because she physically counted femicides. Newspaper headlines would go read the blog, and she would say, okay, actually this is a femicide, count it. And it's very hard to deal with femicide. We cannot even get the data. So this is very important to say, and that's what the petition was calling for those who are not aware. And this is why we're also asking for femicide to be declared a national crisis in Kenya. Now, I want to know what role you think men and boys should play if we're serious about GBV and femicide prevention.
Beyond not perpetrating. Right. That's on a light note. I mean, active bystanders. One of the things that we see a lot is bystanders who don't do anything about it. So I need them to start being active bystanders, who do intervene when they see issues. Yesterday, again, as I said, I was in Sarin Center where we were doing the hosting of the Maskan documentary. And as we were waiting to start, the Cineplex is in a food court, right? The entrance is in the food court. And in the food court, just 20 minutes before we started, a couple started fighting and they had a small child and nobody was bothered. Like no one was moving and it was actual violence. So for us, the first thing, it was so automatic. We didn't even think, we thought about it later. Pick the child, right? And remove the child from the violence. And we're like, if these people can be violent in public, what are they doing behind closed doors? Because they were at a restaurant, Rokomama's actually, and no one, and it was full and nobody did anything other than us, the three of us that were present. Everybody else was like, watching, like, passively, like nothing. No one actively intervening in that. So we need more men to become active bystanders. The other thing I believe is to challenge peers. I tell men all the time, there's this saying, I don't know whether it's true or not, that you're the subtotal of the 5 people around you. So if you are around men who have abandoned their children, you're around men who beat their wives, do you challenge them? Do you speak to them? Do you talk to them about these issues, or what issues are you talking about? I mean, you need to challenge your peers to become better people. And of course, to participate in prevention rather than treating gender-based violence, because I feel like gender-based violence is seen as a women issue. Sometimes when I talk about it, I feel like I am talking to the same people who these things are being mostly perpetrated upon. Not to say that men are not perpetrated upon, but mostly our audiences are women, right? I feel like men need to come in. One of the ways in which you're going to end gender-based violence is actually by having men be actively participating in prevention and any aspects of gender-based violence. So we need men to become our allies rather than to become the people who come into our pages and they're busy there saying not all men.
Have you seen an increase in male allyship since you began your work? Because I realized in the end femicide marches and protests, there has been a lot of men joining. Has there been an increase or is it just the same? And what do you think has actually attributed to that?
I feel like, yes, there has been an increase. More men will actually, which I think every time I see men in those spaces, I'm always like, they're men. I don't know why it surprises me, but I'm really grateful to see a lot more men participating. I feel like there is a bunch of men that are growing up, having seen what violence has looked like in their lives and not wanting to be part of it. I feel like there are quite a number of men who do not want to be party to this. And I have seen allyship of men. I'm not going to sit here and say that I do not see men who participate. They are there. And we are grateful. We would want the number to increase. Even when we staged the first mass ban, about 20% participation was men. And the men who came out of that came out saying, I am changed by what I have seen. And I cannot believe this is what women have been going through. And I am so sorry. And we will be better men to ensure that this doesn't continue. Because the women in their lives are able to point out and to say, hey, this and this. So I feel like that has also participated in an increment of more men being allies. And I hope that from the 20% we can grow it to maybe even 50%. That's a good number for us to work with.
Yes, and I believe it's possible. I've seen there's a lot more programs and nonprofits are rising to engage men and boys in the fight against gender-based violence and femicide. Although I have seen these organizations outside Kenya, I would love to see more in Kenya because I know it's possible. It's just that they don't know. What I come across is that sometimes there is like pluralistic ignorance that is just happening and femicide is happening. They don't know why, but they know it's happening, but they also don't know what they can do. We need to keep educating, which is why I keep going on and on as to like femicide is not a women's issue. Gender-based violence is not a women's issue. It is actually a men and women's issue. We can't deal with it on our own. We need to do it together. Which a lot of people keep saying that, yeah, but it's like feminists and stuff, but it's not at all. It is a men and women's issue. We need men as allies. It's like when your parents tell you something is bad and you don't listen, but your friend will tell you it's bad and you listen to them. Type of situation. A lot of people underestimate the power of peer leadership. So I think we need a lot more of that. But going to your work, we know that this work is truly overwhelming. What keeps you going on these days when it just gets too much?
Put off my phone. I have realized that one of the things that connects me is the phone. So are there days when I'm like, it's too much and I put off my phone? It's something I never used to do, but it's something I've also learned that I need to preserve my own sanity. Because the thing is, and a lot of people don't realize, is that people will send you pictures of dead bodies because they want you to feel, and or they're looking for help or injuries and all of these things that people do, and sometimes you feel like I can't do this anymore. So one of the things I have trained myself is, number one is put off my phone. Number two is I now have boundaries around the time that I pick calls. There was a time you would call me at 11 and I would come out running. I don't do that anymore. 6 o'clock, my phone is off. I am so sorry. I know it's a crisis, but I am a human being and I realize I also need to rest. The other thing is also taking care of myself and just allowing myself rest, allowing myself joy in things, because I realized I had also lost a lot of joy. I had, it was, everything was work until I forgot who I am, as a person because of all the things that I do. So it's investing in joy. It's looking for pockets of joy, because right now life is so hard. You have to look for pockets of joy, things that make you happy. And when I come back to the situation, I can actually be able to look at it with brand new eyes.
Yes, absolutely. To give you clarity, some peace of mind. Like we said, at the end of the day, you're a human and these cases affect you. Seeing a dead body is not easy at all. I know that a lot of people believe that doing this work, you need to be strong all the time. But I disagree. Yeah, I disagree with that. There is very large importance of being vulnerable and just taking space to breathe and rest. So, yes, like I've seen this trend of self-care prioritization across all the activists I've had on my platform. And I think a lot of people from my audience also carry that with them, the importance of resting while fighting for the thing that they love the most, which is justice. So it is a priority. Lastly, I'm so sad it's come to an end, but what do you hope will no longer feel normal in this country because of the work you and others have done?
I want femicide to end. I hope with this work, we're going to see less and less cases of femicide. That is actually my hope and prayer. That is the one thing I hold on to. One of the things I'm going to have to say is that we have seen sustained reporting, right? That never used to happen before. And so for me, I hope that with the sustained reporting and with the sustained pushback, we are going to see less and less cases of gender-based violence. And I hope and I know for a fact that it is going to change. We keep pushing like this in every angle, academically, physically, and by showing up, I believe that we are going to change the world. That is the hope. That these things will not feel normal, because we cannot have normalization of femicide. No, 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 no. A femicide cannot, imagine just saying a woman has died every day. It shouldn't be normal. It should be such a gross violation of humans that we cannot even allow ourselves to be naming it. So one of the things I pray and I hope that will stop being normal is that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We need to end femicide. We need our safety back, our safe environment back. We just need to be more human again, I believe. We need to be more human, we need to be more empathetic, and we need to be more outspoken against the things that are wrong in our society. The whole keeping quiet because no one else is speaking up needs to end. We all just need to get the courage to speak up against what is wrong, and I'm glad that you say there has been sustained reporting, so hopefully there will also be a shift in sustained justice against femicide and GBV. Wow, thank you so much, Njeri, for joining me today. This has it's really filled my soul, my heart. Through your voice, we're invited into the hard truths of gender-based violence and femicide in Kenya, the silence, the grief, the anger, and the fierce hope above all that insists on rising anyway, because the cases are just getting worse and worse. But this is more than a conversation about activism. It's a conversation about courage, about memory, about what it means to keep choosing life, dignity, and justice in a world that often chooses otherwise. So thank you so much. And we truly wish you the best in your work. For the audience, please go and watch the Maskan documentary and the exhibition that has been launched by Njeri. Please interact with her work at Usikimye on all platforms. Report, they have a hotline, and do check out their website and interact with her work. And subscribe. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay informed and stay empowered.
Thank you so much.